Okay, to go back over what I just said so that it's recorded now for anybody that watches this that's missing the first part of class tonight. I have pre-recorded 17 and 18, so you can watch them tomorrow or on Thursday before class starts. Um, in Blackboard now, under your assignments, down at the bottom of all of the chapter quizzes, you'll see a place for you to post your final project. If you need the information on the final project, it's in Blackboard under, well, let me just show you. Let me go exactly to where it is. There's the final project down at the bottom of Blackboard. But to get the information, go to Course Materials and Instructions, and you'll find this final project, Purchase a Machine. I'm giving you $2,000 to build a computer. The things that I want you to include: go to Newegg, Best Buy, Tiger Direct, or any of those and pick all the parts for your computer. Do a printout of what you're going to put in your machine. Show me the parts that you're going to give me. Down here at the bottom where I've got you doing a paper, I'm not actually going to require y'all to do a paper. But those of you at home, if you're not coming to class on Thursday and you don't have a microphone, you will need to write up a few paragraphs so you can present it over the chat window on TeamViewer so you can tell us why you picked the things you did. If you've got a microphone, then you'll be able to talk. You'll just be able to tell it to us all. But it is a requirement that everybody upload to Blackboard a printout showing, the stuff they're going to purchase. Because that's what I'll go in and I'll grade from that, And the things that I'm looking for, again, are: did you pick a CPU and a motherboard that are compatible? Stuff like that. Did you remember to buy memory for it? Did you get a power supply big enough? Things like that. So be sure you get that uploaded before class starts on Thursday. And then on Thursday, we'll have everybody do their presentations. We'll see what kind of machines y'all can come up with. With $2,000, I'm looking to see some probably pretty good gaming machines out of this. And then I will open the floor for any questions that y'all have over anything. Any of the, exam crams. The price limit doesn't need to include peripherals. No, if you've already got a monitor and all, just mention that. I will ask why you didn't buy one, but if you say, I've got a monitor, I've got a keyboard, I didn't need this, then that's fine. I'll open the floor up for any questions that any of you have. One person said they thought it was 2,500. That's fine. The big thing I'm looking for is to see that you know how to build one. If you went with 2,500, that's okay. I'm not going to make you rebuild it for that. So we'll do any questions that you guys have. Make sure you buy. I'm going to give you until Friday. I'm going to do grades in this class this upcoming weekend. So by Friday, make sure you've done all the chapter quizzes and you've done your 60 questions in each of the sections of the exam cram. You'll have to make sure you've done the 701 and the 702. Earlier today, I emailed everybody the information on how to register for the exam. Go ahead and try to do that tomorrow on your own, and if you have trouble, we'll go over it Thursday, but it's pretty easy. I want all of you to go ahead and get registered by the end of the class. I'm going to give y'all a little more time to take it if you need it, but make sure you get registered. Remember, you absolutely positively must register before the end of the year. Otherwise, you're going to be taking the new test whether you like it or not. So you want to make sure you get that much done. With that, are there any questions, or shall we go ahead and start? Pardon me. Shall we go ahead and start on chapter 14? All right, chapter 14 is a pretty easy chapter. It's on installing Windows. And there are not very many things that you're going to need to remember out of this chapter for the test, other than I want to make sure you remember the differences in the different versions of XP. Excuse me, the different versions of Windows. If you haven't installed them in a while, watch those 3 labs. Even if you don't do the labs, I've put up the podcasts of where I've had those labs done in class before, in the 8-week class. Watch those, because it'll go through and I actually install Windows XP, I install Vista, and I install 7. Specifically, I figure most of you have installed the newer ones lately, but if you haven't installed XP in a while, go back and look for that. On my test, there was a question about what part is done graphically and what part is done non-graphically. And it was a true-false question, and the question was something along the lines of in Windows XP, petitioning is done after the GUI is started. And that's a false question. If you remember, think back in XP, you actually petition the drive on that blue screen before the GUI starts up. So our objectives here, we're going to talk about Vista and XP. We're not going to talk about this upgrade to 2000 because that ain't going to be on there. And we'll talk about some basic troubleshooting in the upgrades. So installing an operating system, pretty straightforward. Verify the system has the resources and the space. Acquire drivers you need. If the system already has an operating system on it, download the compatibility toolkit for the new operating system you're going to install and make sure everything's compatible. If it's empty, make sure that you've got your drivers or access to the drivers you may need. Prepare startup disks if that's required. Determine the location of the operating system if you're going to do it as a new one or for dual boot. By the way, does everybody know what dual boot is, what we mean by that? Does anybody not know what dual boot is? Nobody's answering me. Are y'all hearing me? Alright, just making sure y'all are listening. I know all of y'all understand dual boot. I'm just making sure. Alright, determine which edition of the operating system you want to install. If it's a newer machine, that's kind of important, making sure if you've got the memory that you're going to do 64-bit so that you can utilize all the memory in the computer. On a side note, they did release Windows 8 as a 32-bit, and I was actually kind of surprised by that. I have a feeling, and this is not from Microsoft, this is just me, I have a feeling this is going to be the last operating system that will come out as 32-bit. I have a feeling that from here forward, when they make another one, it's all going to be 64-bit. So, verify that the system has the resources. If it's Vista, there's a Vista compatibility logo. You can look for that. Windows certifies all the hardware and software that different people use to say that it's compatible. XP has an XP logo products list. Remember the editions, and we've talked about these before. Vista has Home Basic, Home Premium, Business, and Ultimate. XP is Home and Professional. Any newer PC is going to have the requirements for all of these. But if it's an older machine, you really should look at it. I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in here. If it's an older machine and you don't need Vista or 7 for some reason, put XP on it. XP is a good, tried, trusted, and solid product at this point in time. It's had lots of revisions, but it's good. It's pretty stable. So if you're running it on an older machine, and you don't need all the extra pretty graphics and things from Vista or from 7, put XP on it. There are some different ways to install. You can boot from the DVD or the CD. Windows XP is on a CD. All of the rest are DVDs. You might install from the network. And usually if you're going to do that, you're going to have some sort of method to boot. You're going to boot from the network off the network card, or you may have a USB key or a small CD to boot up to get to the network. Drive imaging is one way that you can install Windows for it to be identical on identical systems. Imaging is what I do in our lab there at Barksdale to make all the systems the same. Some vendors provide a recovery CD that contains an image of Windows. What's getting more common now is for there to be a recovery partition on your hard drive. And it's up to you, once you get a new machine, to make images of disks from that recovery partition. And if your machine is like that, I strongly encourage you to do that, because should you completely lose your machine, the hard drive go out, well, that extra partition, the recovery partition, is going to be gone too. So take the time and sit down and make it. The reason they're doing that is it saves them money. Instead of giving you DVDs, they make you go out and buy them and make your own. And then booting from downloaded floppy disk images. XP, believe it or not, you actually can install from floppy. It's a bunch of them. I think it's like 24 or 25 disks. But to my knowledge, that's the last one. They did not release any of the new ones on floppy. Can you imagine sitting down with how many Windows 8 floppies it would take to install that? That would be insane. But you may have, if you've got a machine with a floppy, you might have a floppy that boots up to get to the network to actually install from. So, clean versions of installation means that there's no previous version on the drive, or you're going to format the drive and delete everything and start from scratch. Two methods to boot from DVD. The system BIOS must be set to boot from the DVD. The DVD should be the first device. The auto run will cause the startup program to run, and you can press a key to start it and follow the prompts. You can also install from within other versions of operating systems, but technically that's an upgrade. After the initial sections for drive partitioning, you'll have to pick the following things. You got to pick the language, the keyboard input, the time. You have to do your product key. That is a question make sure that you're aware of. And I'll tell you all of them. Remember, Windows 8 isn't going to be on this, so you'll know. XP, you have to type a key in before you can finish the install. 7 and Vista, you can install and run for 28 days without a key. Now, without modification on Windows 8, they changed it back so that you have to have a key to install it. But there is a very easy way to change that and make a master install that will run for 28 days without you having to enter a key as you install it. And then if you've got more than one drive, or you're splitting the installation between a couple of drives, you'll have to pick the drive for the installation. Alright, you may then be asked for a username, a password, and it might ask you for a picture. You'll have to pick the computer name. Now that is based on what operating system you install as well. Some of the newer ones don't ask for computer names. You can then configure Windows updates. And there's use recommended settings, install important updates, or ask me later. They say to use the recommended settings. And I know for most people that's good. And I would suggest if you're helping someone else, you set their machine that way. On my own machine, though, I do not use the recommended settings. I tell Windows to download them for me, and I'll determine when to install them. And the reason for that is I don't want my machine to reboot at 3 a.m. when Windows magically decides it needs to reboot because it installed something new. I would rather it reboot when I want it to reboot. Windows 8's gotten a lot better about that, by the way, about not needing to reboot as often. But with if you set automatic updates in 7, Vista, or XP, if it needs to reboot come 3 o'clock, it'll just pop up a message and say you have 12 minutes to stop me before I reboot your machine. And if you've got a Word document open and you haven't saved it, it'll just nicely, after 12 minutes, close that and delete it for you so that it can reboot itself, which is the reason I don't like that. Other things you're going to have to set are going to be the time zone and the date. And then XP or 7, you'll pick a location, home, work, or public, which will determine how the network is set up. All right, so booting XP from the distribution CD. Put the CD in, you'll get a message that says press any key. You'll do that, and then you'll go through, it'll pick the drivers, you'll create the petitions, you'll then get pages of text where you have to accept the license agreement, and then everything is the same as before. If you're going to install from a network drive, there are a couple of things here you might do. You can use the deployment service, which is from Windows Server, or you can use remote installation service. And those are useful when you have what's called a site license. And a site license utilizes the same product key on multiple computers. Windows Bipsy, for example, we've got a site license. So the key that we use to install on all the different windows around the campus there use the same key. And that's why we're able to clone things so easily, because they're the same. You can also build a file called unattend.txt or .xml based off what version of Windows. And it will have information on it that will tell you, it'll answer the questions that Windows asks for you when you're installing, so that it will install unattended. It'll answer all the questions and reboot itself and complete it. And then finally, cloning. If you're going to clone, you've got to have basically the same identical hardware. There are ways around that, but for general purposes, you've got to have the same hardware. Now, Windows has decided that it's legal, or Microsoft does make it legal, if you either have a site license or an individual license on file for each computer. If I were to rebuild a machine and then clone it and give it to someone else, technically I've given them an activated copy of Windows, and that's illegal if they don't own a copy. But Windows, Microsoft realizes people do this a lot, that it makes it easier, so they've laxed their rules enough so that it's okay for you to do that as long as the actual license for that computer is on file. So if you set up a machine for somebody and they bought a copy of 8, but you cloned your computer to theirs for them, as long as they bought a copy of 8 and can prove they have it, then you're fine. There are some problems with domain controllers. If you don't run the utility called sysprep, then the security ID on the clone machine will be the same as the one on the computer that you cloned from, and that can cause a problem with them joining a domain in an Active Directory environment. If you're not in an Active Directory environment, though, that doesn't matter at all, so it's nothing you have to worry about. So recovery CDs or DVDs from most companies like HP and Dell, they're very easy to work with. All you have to do is just put it in and boot it up, and they basically return your computer to the state it was in when you bought it from the store. Most of those, though, you lose anything that you might have downloaded. You can lose your data and all, so back all of that up before you do it. I'm not going to go through boot disks because, like I said, no one's going to be doing this anymore. If you have a computer that can't boot from the CD-ROM, it's a fair assessment that you should probably get a new computer before you install anything on it. All right, something that's important, though, is to remember you do have to pick the type of petitioning you're going to use. And NTFS or FAT32, the general rule is use NTFS unless there is some reason that you need to use FAT32. And there shouldn't be a reason, so you should probably use NTFS for just about anything. Here they're showing in Windows where you actually go on to make the petition. And remember, this is what I talked about was a text-based install. So once you've installed it, verify that it works. I always tell people, click on IE or something, make sure that it actually is running. There's going to be a setup_error.log, setup_error.log file. If it's 0 bytes in size, then no problems were determined. Setup_log.txt is the text portion of the installation. setupact.log is the activity log from the graphical part of the installation. Setup or setuapi.log records an INF file if there are any issues because you had an unattended answer file. And then finally, setup.log is used by the recovery console to make any repairs. We have these same files in Vista and in 7, but they have different names. Again, setuperror.log, 0 bytes is no problems. SMIGlog.xml is the user directory information. That's the SID information. Setupactivity.log again is the GUI portion of the installation, which in Vista is all of it basically. Then you have an app log that is an application log. You have a pre-gather PNP list that is for device information before it was installed, and then post-gather will show information after the drivers have been installed for Vista and for 7. I don't know these file names in 8, but I think they're pretty close to the same. Okay, so upgrading is something interesting. You can upgrade from XP to Vista. You cannot upgrade from XP to 7. You can now upgrade from XP to Windows 8. You could upgrade from 2000 directly to Vista, or you could upgrade from 2000 to XP. To my knowledge, this rule hasn't changed, but you have to stay within the same architecture. And what I mean by that is if you're a 32-bit system, you've got to stay a 32-bit system. So if you're running XP 32-bit, you can't go to Windows 8 64-bit without a complete reinstall. Now they may have changed that some and made a way to do it, but basically you're going to do a complete reinstall if that's the case. Verify your hardware requirements and compatibility. If you're upgrading, check free disk space. You're going to need a lot of disk space because Windows tries to make a whole copy of the old one before it starts the new one. And that is a kind of quick rundown on installing XP and Vista. Like I said, if y'all need more information on this, if this is something you haven't done in a while, go on Blackboard, and there are 2 one-hour podcasts that I've done for the 8-week class where I have them go through and actually install it. And that software is available to you on the server if you want to install them on your own in VirtualBox to see how that works. But if you don't have time for that, at least try to watch the highlights and make sure you can follow how the install was done. The videos I've got up there, I've got one on XP, one on Vista, one on 7, and then one on upgrading XP to Vista. So are there any questions on Chapter 14? Alright, I'm going to jump on into 15 in this same file, and then I'll save it before we do 16. '15 is on troubleshooting Windows. We're going to talk about common problems in Windows, boot issues, application issues, error codes, and how to recover from them. And then we'll talk about backups and service packs. So if Windows won't start properly, one of the first things you can try to do is the last known good configuration. Sometimes that will get you back up and running, relatively painlessly. If you're unsure of the problem, you might use safe mode. If safe mode will boot up, then you know it's something that you've installed or a hardware issue. If Windows won't boot at all, you can use the recovery environment in Vista or 7, or the recovery console in XP or 2000. If Windows will not boot and needs to be restored, there are a couple of things you can do: a complete PC backup, ASR system restore, or an emergency repair disk based off what operating system you're working with. So safe mode starts with a minimal set of drivers. Safe mode with networking, same thing except network support. Safe mode with command prompt loads the minimal drivers but boots up to a command prompt instead of graphical. If you enable boot logging, it creates that NT boot log text file that'll tell you information about the boot. There's a low resolution video mode in some that will enable VGA mode. And what that does is if you think it's an error with the drivers for your video card, that'll boot it up with very low resolution video. And then last known good configuration, basically that works by there's a key in the registry and it's set to 0, and when the system boots successfully, I think it changes it to a 1. And by making copies of the registry, the computer can try to use a previous one. If it sees that it didn't boot completely in the last one, it'll go back and look at those copies of the registry till it finds the one that's got a 1 in it for where it booted with the 0. Here they're just showing a screen of that. This is Vista. Safe mode with networking, command prompt, all of those we talked about. Other options you might have a directory services restore mode. That is only going to be used to restore Active Directory. Debugging mode is an advanced tool that has a debug program enabled to allow kernel troubleshooting. Unless you're a programmer, you're probably not going to use that for much. Disable automatic restart on system failure will keep it from just going into a loop, what we used to call a blue screen loop, where it would just go over and over. It would boot up, blue screen, and reboot, boot up, blue screen, and reboot. In Vista and 7, you can disable driver enforcement. That allows you to run drivers that don't have signatures on them. And then if you hit that key by accident, you can just start Windows normally, which will boot it on up as normal. So, Windows boot problems. They say try WinRE. Boot with the Windows Vista DVD. Booting to a special drive partition with WinRE on it's another option. Press F8 and hit Advanced Options. Look for the Repair Your Computer. If that doesn't show, then RE is not installed. At that point, then you need to crop and insert Figure 15.2 here. Throw it away. That's a good one. If that's not installed, what you can do is repair, restore, a complete restore, or you can try to boot to the command prompt. In all honesty, what really happens if a computer is truly damaged because of Windows, what I find is usually easier to do is back up the user's data, format it, and put a new copy of Windows on it. You can spend hours and hours and hours troubleshooting a problem, but if they've got everything and you can get in there and get their data, it's often a lot easier just to format the thing. So if they've got like a server, what you can do is boot this thing up with safe mode with networking, find a place on their server to copy all their data to, and then format the hard drive on that thing, reinstall Windows, and then copy the data back off the network. If they don't have a network, something that I keep in my toolkit that's a great thing is a Linux CD and a portable hard drive. You can boot their machine up off of that Linux Live CD, plug that portable hard drive in, and then go to their hard drive and copy their data off onto your portable hard drive. Then format their computer, put a new copy of Windows on it, and copy that data back off of your portable drive onto their device. In XP, it's the recovery console. You will still need the administrative passwords to log into it. It's a command line tool. Other options, Vista's Complete Backup. To access it, go to Start, All Programs, Accessories, System Tools, and Backup. To restore, insert the installation disk, restart the system, hit any key to boot the DVD. Select the language, hit Repair Your Computer, and then click on Complete PC Restore. XP, Automated System Recovery, will allow you to restore things like the user accounts, the disk configuration, some of the hardware settings. It's accessed by NT Backup. In Windows 2000, there was a thing called an emergency repair disk, and you'd make this disk pardon me, this disk that would boot up, and the disk would have, well, it wouldn't boot, but it would have information on it that would allow you to get back into your machine if there was a problem. Here they're showing the backup utility in XP. So if there's a boot problem, you know, step one, identify the problem. Gain from the user interview the software that was in use, the hardware that was in use, the task the customer was trying to perform, the environment or work area at the time of the problem, any new software they've added, any changes that have been made, and are other users having similar problems. Basically ask what has changed since the last time the system worked. Use the event logs. There's all kinds of good information in the event logs. And I showed y'all, if y'all have watched the video that I put up for Chapter 13, there was a lot of stuff in there about event logs. I showed y'all what they kind of look like in 8, but they're similar in the other ones. Look for error codes. Check the BIOS. Look at the device manager. See if everything ran. Look at program version, see if there's updates to the programs or service packs, and then also look for power and interference issues. So here they're showing the computer management console in Windows XP and how to start and stop a service. The service they're looking at specifically, it's kind of hard to read, but it's the Zero Wireless Configuration Service. So startup type, you can automatic, manual, or you can disable it. If you think a service is the problem, disable it and see what happens. So if you're having boot errors, if you get a message that says boot manager is missing, you can use the system recovery and startup repair from booting off your disk, and sometimes you can rebuild your boot manager from there. If it's XP, you may get a message that says NT loader is missing or invalid boot.ini. Boot from the CD and go to the recovery console, and if it's Windows 2000, do the emergency repair. Alright, if it's a device manager problem, right click on my computer and go to management, or start computermanagement.msc from the command line. If a device is disabled, it'll have a red X next to it. If a device malfunctions, it'll have an exclamation mark with a yellow circle on it. I can disable a device. I don't have any that aren't working to show you what that looks like, but it's just a little triangle with an exclamation mark in it from the device manager. If there's trouble installing an application, usually the problem is lack of administrative access. Maybe the users don't have access to install things on the computer. It could be a system incompatibility with not enough memory. Chances are, though, if there's enough memory and they do have administrative access, then they just don't have enough space on the hard drive. So check to see if something else can be done. Maybe it's the CD not reading the media. Look in the application viewer in the event log. Here they're showing the task manager. I'll show you all again the Windows 8 one. It looks a little different than that one. In Windows 8 it shows what's starting up at different places as well. So you see I have tons of instances of Chrome running on this computer. In their graphic here they're showing it for Windows XP. Alright, so one thing that's important to do with Microsoft products, well, with all products in general, this does happen in the Linux world and the OS X world as well, you got to keep them updated. And in Windows, when they release a major update, they will call it a service pack update. And those are usually hundreds of patches that are rolled together in one system. And then there's a couple of options, the Windows Update Service or Microsoft Update. If you're using Windows Update, it's just going to update Windows products. But Microsoft released Microsoft Update, which will also update all of the Windows products and all of the Microsoft products like Word and Excel and any of those you've got on your machine. So I don't know that they really did a good enough job of explaining a service pack there, but basically service packs roll all of the updates into one. If you're going to install XP on somebody's machine, for example, now, I just installed XP in a virtual machine not long ago, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of updates. But you can cut that number down significantly if you install XP and then install Service Pack 3. If you do those two together, then reboot it, you cut it down to where there's only about 130 updates that need to be run. Whereas if you just start doing Windows Update from XP, you're going to run into installing 100 and rebooting, and then you'll have 100 more, and 100 more, and 100 more. So those service packs roll all those updates together. And in the Microsoft world, service packs are cumulative. What we mean by that is with XP, you don't have to install Service Pack 1, then 2, then 3. Service Pack 3 includes all the updates that were in Service Pack 1 and Pack 2. So another thing you might do is perform a scheduled backup. And that's done with the Task Scheduler. In Vista, there's an image backup. But to do this in XP, you need third-party software like Ghost or Acronis or Drive Image. Based off what the information is, I use Dropbox for all of the backup of the stuff that I really need. If it's more stuff than I want to put in Dropbox, or if I'm helping somebody else, I like a little free utility called SyncBack that'll just sync a directory over to a server, be it an FTP server or a networked hard drive or something like that. So again, review the troubleshooting process. Identify the problem, establish the cause, test the theory, identify a solution, verify system functions, and then document the solution. That is a quick rundown on Chapter 15. Do you guys have any questions on 15? All right, let me save our file here.